it might be the journalist or something, just kicks it and we're super distanced from it, right? So
yeah,
the power of what a close-up does, bringing us closer to something, but then if we're not close up, then it can just seem something super irrelevant, you know?
Yeah, or just the power of closing in on something or someone. Can you even say that? But the point is getting closer to something or someone that might not initially seem important, but then as you get closer, you realize, hey, there's an actual story here. Welcome back to Screen View Mirror. I'm your host, Emma, and you're listening to yet another episode of Screen View Thoughts. On this episode of What Made the Film, where we discuss movies and the most interesting features of the film and the cinematic elements of it, we will be looking at Abbas Kiarostami's 1990 close-up, and I am delighted to welcome Patrick back onto Screen View Mirror, onto the podcast. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Emma. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming back. All right, so close-up, first impression. Well, actually, before we talk about the first impressions, let me just quickly run through the plot so that those of you who haven't seen the film, hopefully do go watch the film now if you haven't seen it. But if you want to listen to this regardless, just so you know, the plot is strange. Well, is it strange? I mean, it's not that strange. It's just that the way it's framed is strange because it's kind of a true story and it's a semi-documentary. Anyway, the plot is a true story about this guy who loves cinema, and he impersonates a filmmaker, and he spends some time eventually with a family. Then he gets found out that he's a fraud, and he gets put on trial. And so the interesting thing about the film is that the trial scenes are shot as a documentary, and I say that very carefully because it's about truth and trusting what you see and not knowing what's what, but the trial scenes are filmed as a documentary, and then the flashbacks that sort of interpolate the trial are filmed as reenactments of past events. But anyway, that's pretty much the plot of the movie. Patrick, if you want to add anything to that, or just your first impressions, or yeah.
Well, I think I'd add also that a very essential element of close-up derives from the sort of middle ground between the documentary and the stage reenactments, where it's almost made to feel like they're both real and they're both not, in a sense. And I think that's where a lot of the interesting elements of this film come from, where, you know, what we're assuming is documentary footage, and the trial starts with a film slate closing and saying, okay, trial scene 1, just to kind of mess their heads a little bit. And some of the more staged scenes seem almost like set up like interviews at certain points.
Yeah.
So it's done specifically to make us just throw our heads for a loop, you know, and I think that's a very interesting element of this film, for sure.
No, definitely. The thing about the film is that it kind of comes in layers, just like the message. So it gets unfolded to us gradually through the trial and the flashbacks, but then there's this fine line between truth and untruth, and you never really know if what you're seeing is impromptu, sort of spontaneous dialogue or a reenactment of the past. Because it was based on real events, and that did happen. And it's actually interesting because Kiarostami got the character. Well, should I call them characters or should I call them actors? Because
I guess they're both.
They're both. Well, yeah, they are both. Well, anyway, he got the people involved in the true story to then agree to reenact certain scenes which had happened in real life for the film. So that was pretty interesting. But yeah, the film is pretty much a commentary on the importance of the medium being film, and how images can be powerful in the way that they carry meaning and stuff like that. So what do you think?
As they say, right, the medium is the message. And so
yes.
I think that there's no stronger example of that maybe than Close Up, where essentially it becomes a film about a film about a film, but it's also a film about film. Another strong element of this is that I think Kiarostami definitely leans in pretty heavily to the sort of innate flaws that come with this type of indie filmmaking. Like, there's definitely some scenes where there's quality of the image seems to be drastically lower than in other scenes. The audio sort of cuts slightly in and out, and then that obviously cascades in the climax somewhat, where it's this absolutely surreal, ethereal moment of bliss while just the audio cuts in and out. And I think that's so powerful because it's kind of bringing us closer to the truths of these characters in a sense.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the charm. It's kind of telling us, film isn't about being technically perfect. It's a bit more about, just the human things that are going on,
Yeah, for sure. I have two things to say about that ending. The first is that it, again, reiterates the fact of, can you trust what you see? Can you trust what you hear? And that is the basis for the plot of the film. That's the moral of the story, if you will, the real life story of, can you trust what the fraud, what Sabzian did and what he's saying? And then at the same time, it's like, okay, can we trust the images on the screen that we see? So I don't know if putting that mistake in the end of the film, I don't know if that was deliberate. I don't know if that was a genuine mistake that he then deliberately chose to keep. You don't know. That's the answer. The answer is you can't always know. And as long as you're aware of that, that's fine. As long as you're aware of the fact that you have to look both ways to sort of be able to cross the street of the story, right? And not get hit by the car of untruth, then yeah, you're fine. But it's something that we have to keep in mind, right? But then the other thing about that ending is it's kind of, I feel like it wraps the story, but at the same time opens a different story, which, okay, arguably that could be said about every single film ending ever. I get that was vague, but in application to this film, the ending kind of gives us closure on the story of, okay, well, it got settled. They forgave each other. And Mac Milbath was actually asked by Kiarostami to come into the film and help reconcile the family and Sabzian. And all right, so we get that closure. But then there's just that moment when they're driving on the bicycle and there's music. I think that's the only moment throughout the film where there's music. And it's just utter.
During that scene?
Sorry?
Is there music during that scene? I think it's only during the credits that there's music.
No, it's during that scene as well. Trust me, it was there. I remember seeing it. It's true. No, but again, The questioning. Do I remember seeing it? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We have to be open to that possibility. But let's assume the music, for the purpose of my argument, let's assume the music was during that scene. It just felt so fleeting and ephemeral and unlike any other moment during the film, because the whole film was kind of, if it was a color, it would be gray or brown. It would just be, I can't say boring, but very
and toned down for the
toned
rest
down.
of the film.
Yeah, mute almost. Yeah. Literally, it was on mute, even though it wasn't. Yeah. It kind of felt like it wasn't bringing much life, much color to the screen. Maybe because it was partially about a trial case, about a fraud, or a documentary or whatever. But that ending with the music, there's something that opened a whole different story. I feel like there could be a sequel to this, honestly.
It's called Cyclist.
Yeah, well, that's, or alternatively, the alternative interpretation of Close Up is that it is an advertisement for The Cyclist. That's it.
For context, just for anyone who, The Cyclist is the film of Mac Milbath that came right before Close Up came out. So it's the most recent film of the filmmaker being impersonated, essentially. And so the Hussein Sabzian, the man who is impersonating him, says at one point while he's being interviewed that the cyclist is a part of me. So like that's how important that film and that filmmaker sort of is to him. And the fact that at the end he's riding on a motorcycle with the man who made the cyclist, holding flowers as they sort of gently move in the wind on his face as the audio cuts in and out. It's something not of this world. I'm convinced it was a scene sent to us from Mars. It's amazing. It's so beautiful. It's so crazy. I absolutely love it.
The film is a perfect example of a mix of different types of simulacra. The reenacting scenes that we see throughout the film are the mask. It's what Baudrillard said was the mask, the perverted copy of the truth, the untruth, what attempts to hide the truth. And the way those reenactment scenes differ from the interview, trial, court proceedings scenes, assuming they are filmed in real time and unscripted and completely real, well, those scenes are nonetheless still a reflection because there's still a kind of ground zero baseline for untruth. So you end up looking at a medium or just at a screen, at a story that's portrayed through A, a reflection with those trial scenes, and then B, a mask where it's like they're hiding the truth because anyway, they're reenacting it. And whether you like it or not, you know, it's like that pipe painting. This is not a pipe. Whether you like it or not, this is not the event. Because you can you simulate something? That's actually, maybe that's what the film also tries to ask. Can you, as a filmmaker, simulate truth, or can you simulate reality? What do you think as a filmmaker?
You simulate a truth. And then even as an actor, let's say, because Sabzian is acting as Makhmalbaf, can you capture the truth of another person also, you know?
Exactly, because then there's this element of trust between Sabzian and the family. So, as I said, the film kind of unravels in layers. Well, there are those layers of trust. The family no longer trusts Sabzian. We no longer trust the screen. I think part of it involves a surrender. You have to trust yourself enough to surrender part of your doubt to be able to get along with whatever truth you're being presented with.
If we look at it through the lens of art, I think the only way we could say truth is like a sort of personal truth of expression. But then even at that, can you really fully express that? Because to someone else watching something, they're going to interpret their own sort of truth of it, right? So there's this unspoken theme of communicating a sort of personal truth, but then that being lost through these different layers of cinematic truth, I guess, that are happening simultaneously. And so,
yeah, and that just goes back to the responsibility that film has or doesn't have, and the responsibility that filmmakers have or don't. So, okay, well, your truth is not my truth because the way we see truth is different. I'm just talking in hypotheticals here. And yeah, there's a different purpose and a different outcome from truth of expression, truth in expression, if you will, and the truth of events. Is there such a thing as a pure truth that you can then replicate in the arts? I don't know. I don't really know. I can't say yes or no because I genuinely do not know. Maybe that's the truth.
I'd also like to touch on maybe some of the more technical elements here.
Oh, yes, please. This was, oh my God, I forgot. We were supposed to do like the what made the film, and here I'm on my tangent of what is truth. Yes, please go forth with the technical elements as the filmmaker of this podcast episode.
Close-up is much more interesting than its technical elements anyway, but hey. I think there's some interesting ways that these technical elements really strengthen some of the ideas we're talking about. I think mainly if we look at dialogue somewhat, there's the way that in the reenacted scenes, in the stage scenes, for example, when Sabzian meets the mother on the bus, it seems as though there's so many layers of dialogue, and they're just talking over each other. It's going so fast, and so it feels very authentic. It feels like it's simulating an authentic conversation, even though this is, a staged scene. And I think that plays to how Kiarostami is trying to sort of create this confusion in us, this disorientation of what is real and what is not, as you were talking about. And then if we look at other things, if you look at editing, there's certain moments where, it feels like cinema, like an art film, at the very beginning, I think it's like a cab driver or something kicks a water bottle, and we see a close-up of a water bottle sort of rolling down a hill, which is, a very fiction art kind of approach to cut to that, whereas in so many other scenes we're sort of distanced, watching characters just kind of walk around, and talk from a distance. And most specifically, I think in the courtroom, in the actual trial, we're set up with the notion that, okay, there's a close-up camera on Sabzian, and then there's another sort of wider camera on the courtroom itself. The Kiarostami, I'm assuming it's Kiarostami, literally says this to us and to them. He says, okay, we have two cameras here. One is a close-up on you. The rest is the whole courtroom. But then as the scene kind of moves on, the close-up on Sabzian sort of drifts, and the focus kind of moves around to just random different characters who seem to bear no real significance to anything going on. They're kind of just like scratching or like walking out of the courtroom for a second. But then also we cut weirdly to some other things too that haven't been set up. Like there's a close-up shot from the side of the actual judge.
Yeah, there's I was gonna say that there's a close-up on the judge. And I don't know where that camera came from. Maybe it was the camera that he had on the side as well for the jury, but I don't know. Wait, was there a jury? I don't think there was a jury.
What's happening,
Either way, no, yeah, the points that you make are very, very relevant as well. And the fact that he had his separate close-up camera is kind of indicative of the fact that Kiarostami gave him a voice to tell his story through this film. He was, in my opinion, able to tell a story that maybe in an untelevised court trial he might not have been able to tell. So, again, that speaks to the volume and importance and power of images and the hashtag medium. What I was going to say.
Always the more pretentious movies. What we're looking. I would call it a MacGuffin, but it's almost a... But then what is a close-up in the context of this movie? It's something that bring these cinematic techniques into the realm of the philosophical almost. This one cinematic technique. Let's pay attention to this thing I'm looking at is important. This one cinematic technique and all its implications.
If we answer my initial question of what made the film in one word, what made Close-Up, I think we should just say Close-Up. The Close-Up made Close-Up.
Wild. Absolutely wild, but fair.
Yeah. And trust, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because in our own interpretations of the film, well, we have to trust them in order to internalize them. And within the production of the film itself, you had Kiarostami, who trusted that Mac Melbaf and Sabzian and the family would reenact those scenes, and trust in art. So there's...
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's pretty much it for today. So unless you have anything to add...
We went up on Close-Up, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for coming on to Screen View Mirror, the podcast series. Again, always a great pleasure having you. And in the meantime, the rest of you, stay tuned. We will see, well, maybe not Patrick and I, because I doubt we'll be doing 2 podcast episodes in a row, but Oh boy, okay. Just keep watching movies, reflecting on cinema, all that stuff, the outro, you know how it goes.